I made this video with an assumption that everyone and their pet carrot has heard about the mystical folktale creature known as Support Warrior, and hopes to once encounter such marvel of nature.
Like that's ever gonna happen.
Unfortunately, I only bring bad news, sorrow, tragedy, and sometimes principality. But back to the point. The Great Hydrated One has descended from the clouds and presented us with the proposed changes, which go as follows. Martial Cadence received increased quickness duration in competitive modes. Charge, Warhorn Skill 4, received reduction in swiftness duration and cooldown, both went down to 15 seconds, both in PvP only. Call of Valor and Vigorous Shouts both received essentially the same change. Their scaling with healing power goes up to 1.5 in PvP only. As much as I'd like to be optimistic, I'm fairly certain these changes missed the mark almost as badly as I miss pretty much every enemy in pretty much every FPS in existence. But back to the point. These changes will enable warrior bunker builds rather than support builds, because warrior's issue with support builds in PvP doesn't lie in the volume of healing, but rather in requirements warrior is forced to fulfill to access said healing and in glaring lack of defensive utility. To hammer my point home while still in making, let's compare warrior's healing to known and liked PvP support, the Core Heal Guardian. Virtue of Resolve heals 1.6k plus 1.0 healing power. Staff's Holy Strike heals 177 plus 0.1 healing power. And Empower heals for 496 plus 0.17 3 times. Mace Auto Chain Final Hit heals for 367 plus 0.5 healing power. And Shield of Absorption heals for 1.3 plus 0.2 healing power. Receive the Light alone can heal for up to 5.22k plus 1.0 healing power, putting Guardian at grand total of 10.12k plus 3.31 healing power. Meanwhile, with current numbers, Warrior can heal an ally for 6k plus 6.0 healing power with 6 shouts and apply 2.6k plus 1.2 heal power as barrier from Warhorn. Adding to that traits, Soldier's Comfort, which heals for 970 plus 0.8 and Shrug It Off, which adds another shout to the mix for another 1k plus 1.0 and 310 plus 0.2 healing power per condition removed. That with Rune of the Soldier and assumption that every skill removes maximum possible number of conditions gives us grand total of 13.55k plus 9.18 healing power, which is more than Guardian's previous numbers, even before we consider the fact that Vigorous Shouts grants additional healing power based on percentage of power. If that's the case, why is Support Guardian played and Warrior is not? The answer is hilariously simple. Guardian achieves his numbers with weapon skills, class mechanic and heal skill alone, without tangoing with the traits or utility skills, while Warrior needs to dedicate himself to entire trait line and needs all 3 of his utility slots to achieve his numbers. That means, for anyone unaware, that Guardian can put anything he desires in his utility slots, whether that be stun breaks, additional healing, boons or mobility, crowd control, cleanse, instant revive or projectile denial. That is only a matter of player preference. Especially while considering that Shield of Absorption, before everything, is a projectile denial skill. Protector's Strike and Shield of Judgment both grant Aegis and protection, not to mention Regeneration from Symbol of Faith, Swiftness from Symbol of Swiftness, and Might from Empower. In his weapons alone, Guardian has more defensive boons and effects than Warrior has in his entire toolkit. And therefore, Guardian's choice of utilities is also much more free. The same situation repeats if we dare to compare Warrior to Heal Tempest. Magnetic Aura alone puts to shame Warrior's entire defensive arsenal, and Overloads, Boon Application and entire Water Element make Warrior look like a laughingstock in terms of support. Not to mention that Elementalist once again has his utility slots free for whatever he pleases. To achieve healing output competitive with other supports, Warrior has to dedicate all 3 of his utility slots to shouts, which leaves him with 1 stun break, no iframes and poor boon application with only Might and Fury. Every potentially useful skill, like Banner of Defense for example, comes at a cost of healing output. To which we may add that Warrior might be a big health bar with high armor rating, but that doesn't make him tough or threatening. If you don't pack serious iframes or at least damage mitigation, any Willbender, Daredevil, Virtuoso, Scrapper or Holo can instantly hook you up with Grenth, no matter how much health you have. In comparison to Elementalist, who can just refuse getting critically hit with the power of I disagree, and Guardian with protection, Aegis, Regen and self-healing layered on top of one another, a support warrior that can only scream in his defense is really easy to focus down and destroy. Why would anyone with a right mind decide against having a solid support that brings tons of defensive and offensive boons, projectile denial, healing and cleansing, and on top of that can fend for himself when Scheisse hits the ventilator thanks to the built-in defenses and accessible iframes, only to pick instead a support that only brings healing and cleansing, on top of which requires much more attention from his teammates? Support warrior does not exist. He cannot and will not exist in PvP, not without some serious changes. Warrior doesn't have a single way to share protection or resolution. I dare you to find me a way for Warrior to share protection with his allies. Not a single of Warrior's skills grant protection to himself, let alone to his allies. You need thick skin or guard counter, the traits, to get any protection at all, and only way to apply protection to allies in PvP Warrior has access to are bloody runes of the Herald and the Grove. And the exact same stupid scenario repeats with literally every single utility supports usually bring to the table. Only 2 skills Warrior has can stun break your allies, and one of them you can't even stun break yourself with. Only 1 skill grants Aegis to allies, all competing for the same 3 utility slots with 4 Great Justice and On My Mark. 2 shouts that are only reliable source of group healing Warrior has, because Shrug It Off only heals when it cleanses a condition, and Soldier's Comfort requires you to hit an enemy with your best. There is only 1 skill that is a projectile denial dome, and only 1 skill that insta revives, and they both occupy the same slot, so you can't take both of them. Only non-elite projectile denial skill Warrior has is Electric Fence, and yes, it comes at the cost of healing output. Concluding. Without additional utility in form of some kind of projectile denial, defensive boons, cleanse and healing that doesn't require constant condition pressure, free utility slots and a punching bag to properly function, Warrior cannot become healthy support in PvP. The Warrior, even with proposed healing changes, can only fend for himself through lack of shared utility in his base kit, utilities and trait lines. The Warrior needs a rework, at least a partial rework. Not numbering changes that accomplish nothing of actual substance. But for that to happen, that thought must first go through the minds of people with actual say in the matter, that is, game devs. Truth is, I can scream into the void as much as I want, and that's the end of the video, but not the end of discussion. Maybe I am stubborn enough to make my voice heard. Someday we'll see. Crabface out.